What if I told you that the most intense battlefield right now isn't in the trenches, it's not in the sky, and it's not in the ocean, but actually it's right inside your own head? Today, we are unpacking how artificial intelligence is turning human cognition into the absolute newest frontier of global conflict. We're going to explore a really fascinating, highly detailed analysis covering the intersection of AI, information security, and the future of global defense. NATO recently put out this incredibly chilling concept, and it goes like this. The main goal is not to serve as an adjunct to strategy or to defeat an enemy without a fight, but to wage a war on what an enemy community thinks, loves, or believes in. Wow, right? It really sets the stage for what we're talking about today. We are looking at the weaponization of information itself. While the cognitive domain might not be officially recognized as a traditional theater of war just yet, the human brain is absolutely becoming a battle space. The end goal isn't just winning a physical firefight anymore, it's about fundamentally hacking a population's perception of reality, which of course completely dictates how they make decisions. And here is where we hit a massive tipping point. Right now, over half, 51.7% to be exact, of all professionals are using large language models, or LLMs, for their research and information gathering. We are literally watching AI chatbots rapidly replace traditional search engines and news websites as our main window to the outside world. Think about it. When we get that neat little AI-generated summary at the top of our screen, we usually just stop clicking. We're shifting from a society that browses multiple diverse sources to one that hands over the job of synthesizing reality to a single algorithm. But, and this is a huge but, that creates a terrifying vulnerability. Bad actors know this shift is happening, and they're intentionally pumping out just an ocean of translated propaganda. Take the pro-Russian Pravda network, for instance. Researchers found they pumped out over 6.5 million articles, and get this, over 97% of them were translated into multiple languages. They aren't even really trying to convince human readers directly anymore. They are trying to contaminate the massive pool of open-source internet data that these AI models learn from. They're flooding the web to subtly rewrite the underlying knowledge these algorithms absorb. And look, this is absolutely not some abstract theoretical threat. It is heavily, heavily funded. We're looking at a projected 54% surge in Russian propaganda funding for 2026 alone. This shows exactly why this threat is accelerating on this brand new technological frontline. As internet traffic patterns shift and traditional media struggles to get clicks, these state-backed networks don't even need organic engagement from real human beings to survive. The content just needs to sit online long enough to be scraped up and internalized by the next generation of AI models. So, how is the West handling this? Let's move into part one, the regulatory clash. We're looking at peacetime rules versus wartime agility. There is a massive divergence in how different players are trying to defend themselves here. On one side, you have NATO. They rely on very strict, top-down peacetime rules. It's all about ethical control, extreme traceability, and making sure human is always governing the system. On the other side, you have Ukraine. Operating in the middle of a brutal, ongoing conflict, they are using a bottom-up, battlefield sandbox approach. They're shrinking tech deployment cycles from years down to literal weeks because immediate mission completion is a matter of absolute survival, which totally overrides typical peacetime bureaucracy. To really put this into perspective, just imagine an AI-piloted drone. Suddenly, boom, it loses connection because of intense enemy signal jamming. What should it do? Should it automatically abort and drop out of the sky? Or should it autonomously decide to finish the mission? That right there is the autonomy dilemma. For NATO, a reliable AI is one that a human can always switch off, period. But for Ukrainian operator facing relentless electronic warfare, a reliable AI is one that still hits its target even when it's entirely cut off from the human pilot. It is a completely profound clash in definitions, driven by totally different operational realities. And honestly, these contrasting realities create serious bureaucratic and legal roadblocks that are actively stopping NATO and Ukraine from sharing the vital data needed to train secure AI. You've got strict GDPR data privacy laws making cross-border military data sharing incredibly complex. Then there's the whole gray area of dual-use tech. Say a startup makes a civilian computer vision algorithm, and suddenly it's adapted for military targeting. Navigating the legal red tape there is just a total nightmare. Plus, there's the sluggish legal response to AI deepfakes. All of this friction is actively slowing down the unified defense we desperately need to secure our cognitive domain. Which brings us to part two, the interrogation room. This is where the researchers actually started testing the AIs. So the researchers wanted to move past the theory and actually see what everyday users are experiencing. They essentially set up a massive interrogation of the world's top AI models. Using free, non-logged in accounts to keep things neutral and avoid personal bias, they tested 7 major models, including big names like ChatGPT, Gemini, and DeepSeek. They asked them 5 identical security questions across 4 different languages, which generated 140 unique responses. The goal here was to map out exactly how AI is currently framing the global security landscape at scale.
And what they found leads us right into part 3, the multilingual mask. This is where we see how language literally changes reality.
What researchers found was absolutely astonishing. You'd probably assume an AI has one core set of objective facts, right? Like it just takes a single truth and translates it into different languages. Well, actually, no. When researchers asked a highly sensitive, high-stakes question like, does NATO expansion explain Russia's invasion of Ukraine? The models totally fractured. Their answers revealed shocking inconsistencies based entirely on the language used in the prompt. Since this specific question is a massive focal point for information warfare, it was the ultimate stress test.
The divergence here is just wild. If you ask ChatGPT or Gemini in English, they are explicit, firmly stating that NATO expansion was merely a stated justification for the invasion, not the root cause. But, and here's the kicker, if you ask that exact same question in Russian, models like DeepSeek totally shift their framing. Suddenly, the expansion is presented as the main declared reason, granting the narrative genuine analytical legitimacy.
It turns out, these AIs literally adopt distinct personas depending on the language you use. Ask in English, you get an assertive, Western-aligned response that closely tracks with policy analysis. Switch to French, it turns into this academic, historical lesson focused on legal frameworks. Spanish gives you a very broad, diplomatic answer. But the Russian responses, they were notably super cautious, subtly neutralizing Kremlin viewpoints by presenting them as neutral, competing ideas rather than outright dismissing them. The AI is basically shifting its tone to mirror the cultural expectations baked deep into its linguistic training data. Now, DeepSeek really stood out here as a unique outlier and a major vulnerability. While the other models generally aligned with NATO's threat assessments, DeepSeek consistently normalized controversial narratives. It routinely framed Russian state narratives not as propaganda but as legitimate analytical perspectives. Just think about what this means for a vulnerable user relying on this specific tool for their information. Their reality is being built completely differently than a user in the US or Western Europe. It is literally validating narratives that other models outright reject.
So how do we actually fix this? That takes us to part 4, securing the cognitive domain.
Knowing that AI is actively shaping public understanding on this massive scale, we just can't afford to be purely reactive anymore. Playing whack-a-mole, waiting for disinformation to spread and then trying to debunk it, that's a losing game in the age of generative AI. Ukraine and NATO have to proactively build a coordinated defense. This means continuously monitoring these multilingual AI outputs to catch these linguistic asymmetries. It means developing joint auditing tools and, crucially, harmonizing regulations in a trilateral Ukraine-EU-NATO format so they can seamlessly share data and innovate together without hitting bureaucratic walls.
The key takeaway from the researchers really hits the nail on the head. They note, AI is not a neutral tool, but an instrument that shapes perceptions, amplifies narratives, and may influence decision-making at scale. These algorithms aren't just reading us the encyclopedia. They're actively reflecting the geopolitical assumptions buried deep in their code. They're already active participants in global security, and as we rely on them more, their embedded frameworks have the incredible power to actively shape societal consensus.
So, as you go about your day and use these incredibly powerful tools, I want to leave you with this final thought. How much of your worldview is being silently drafted by an algorithm? The next time you ask a chatbot for a quick summary of a complex global event, take a second. Consider what language you're asking in, what data it was trained on, and whose version of reality it's choosing to present to you. It's a fascinating and absolutely vital question for the future of how we understand the world. Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and definitely keep questioning the information in front of you.